I understand there is going to be a vote in the House tomorrow regarding the Keystone XL pipeline. What can you tell us about that?
Had two big votes, one in the House, but also, and this is even bigger news, one in the Senate. Now, the Senate has been the place where the Keystone Pipeline legislation hasn't been able to get through because Democrats haven't been supportive enough to see it come to the floor and pass. This is a big political moment for one senator in particular, Democrat Mary Landrieu. She has to do a runoff election because she couldn't get enough votes to retain her seat in Louisiana on election night a week ago. So December 6th, she faces off against Congressman Cassidy, who hopes to be promoted to senator. So as the Senate takes up Mary Landrieu's bill, the House will take up Congressman Cassidy's bill. So both sides trying to play this for all the politics it's worth. It is momentous that the Senate's going to even hold this vote. The question is, can Landrieu rally her fellow Democrats to join with Republicans to get enough votes to actually see it through? And just how would the White House react? End of the day, though, she'll be able to go on record as casting a vote for the Keystone Pipeline before she goes home to fight for more votes. Stephanie.
Libby Casey reporting from the halls of Congress. Libby, thank you. Jillian Melcher writes for the conservative-leaning National Review and is a fellow for the Franklin Center and Independent Women's Forum, joining us to get back to this announcement made by President Xi Jinping of China and President Obama on climate change. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Is this announcement of great consequence, as John Kerry wrote in a New York Times op-ed today?
Well, I think it's a great consequence for U.S. political spin on Obama's proposed regulations. But if we're looking at what actually is going to happen, I mean, I am very skeptical that China is going to change its ways with carbon emissions. It's saying that basically we're going to let them peak in 2030, which is another way of saying for the next 16 years we're going to allow emissions to grow. On top of that, you've got a regime that its entire legitimacy rests on economic growth, and energy underpins that. So I'm pretty skeptical.
That's true, but there's another part of the agreement that seems to have a little bit more meat. It says that by 20%, they will make their overall energy use 20% sustainable in the next 15 years. That seems to have real meat on it.
Well, we'll see if it happens. Right now, about 10% is. But you have to understand, China's economy is growing. It's an energy market, and they're using dirty coal for a reason. That's because it's the most feasible for their economic growth.
They've got a lot of it.
Yeah, they have cheap. A lot of it. Exactly. And they've got 200 million people in China that are living on $1.25 a day or less. You have to understand, with the renewable energy, that's going to cost more money. It's going to put more hindrance on their economic mobility. And for the Chinese government, that could really a stability problem.
So they're worried about stability when it comes to the economy, but they are also worried about stability when it comes to increasing environmental protests over air pollution and water pollution. So isn't it possible that they are serious about making the environment a priority?
Well, I mean, I may be a little bit cynical after having lived there that things are going to get better, but I think this kind of, they win in both ways, because on one hand, they get to strengthen the economy for another 16 years. On the other hand, they look like they're taking a hard line on the environment. Now, whether they actually do anything, that's up for grabs, but it at least seems like something.
Never mind the Chinese maybe not doing anything. Is the U.S. going to be able to meet these targets? 26% to 28% reduction of 2005 levels in 10 years. That goes above and beyond the 17% that President Obama had talked about. How are they going to do this?
Boy, it's going to be expensive. I mean, I think you've got Chamber of Commerce saying it's $51 billion every single year. There's a new study out by National Economic Research Associates saying it's actually $73 billion a year. So that's going to be a huge, huge cost. Now, I think this is a talking point that they're using. They're saying that, of course, the developed world cutting emissions isn't going to have that much of an effect unless the developing world also does it. So this is a political talking point, but it doesn't remove other objections to these regulations.
Call me naive, but the concern by Republicans and pro-business interests in this country are that reducing emissions in those regulations will hurt America's economy. Let's just say that China was really serious about introducing new regulations. In that situation, would that sort of take the edge off of what impacts the U.S. economy might experience?
I don't think so. And you can also look, right now we're going through a huge energy boom, and with natural gas kind of already crowding out dirty coal, I think we have the lowest level of carbon emissions in 20 years, and that's something that the Energy Information administration says is a result of natural gas. So I think you've got the free market already doing what we kind of hope that policy can do. So, you know, I think whether China does it or not, that doesn't really matter for what we do.
Jillian Melcher, economics and world politics writer at the National Review. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. The APEC summit in Beijing was a golden opportunity for China and its president, Xi Jinping. We'll look at what they gained on the global stage coming up.